what is happening in the market out there as far as global impact. We're getting a lot of the ransomware, the malware. The big thing these days is the WannaCry hack that has come out and how we handle against that. Now, the slide I have up on the screen is I was reading through Cisco's annual security report, and it's a great document that I highly suggest everybody has a glance at. And the one thing that I picked up of an infographic in there is basically talks about the security professionals and what they find either very or extremely challenging. And the key part is here is 57, 58% feel that in these different areas that they find them challenging. Critical concern for everybody to make sure that we have our due diligence and our understanding of what's happening out there as far as cybersecurity and awareness, regardless of your position or what role you have in your organization. And what I would like to do is just assume that as far as any critical conditions that are out there related to cybersecurity, and we recognize that there is a struggle with people as far as making sure that the security professionals are keeping pace with this reality. So what I would like to do is prompt Tejas on how he feels to help defend these organizations and any new and upcoming sources of cybersecurity threats.
Hey, thanks, Brad. Absolutely. There's a lot of challenges abound within security, one of which is the lack of skilled talent. And I'm going to focus a lot around talent and skills because in most cases, companies are echoing this sentiment. Nearly all organizations see security as an issue. Over half of them are rating the shortage of staff as the major challenge in terms of security for their organizations. You can see on the infographic on the screen here that according to Forrester, over 63% of North American and European enterprise technology decision makers really plan to increase security skills training to combat this future threat landscape that they're challenged with. With that said, however, 53% of these organizations are experiencing delays almost as long as 6 months in order to find the qualified cybersecurity candidates. They just can't find them. The other issue is that these companies are trying to figure out how they can even qualify these candidates, right? Anybody can cite security knowledge on their CVs or their resumes, but this is where the authorized Cisco training as well as certifications play a critical role. They offer employers an industry benchmark against which to validate cybersecurity and security skills.
And as you just mentioned, the one thing that we have as a question to you is, do you feel companies are well informed about security issues today?
You know, when you talk about security issues or security concerns, there are multiple components that need to be considered. First of all, security is a global situation, right? It happens, and especially with the advent of the cloud and the global Internet of Things phenomenon, what's happening is threats are emerging from anywhere at any time from any location geographically. Secondly, it's no longer limited to just protecting of the network, right, or protection of the infrastructure. Today, threats, viruses, and other issues can be introduced through applications, through the internet, or even end devices that are leveraging the network infrastructure. Third, and another thing to consider is how the infrastructure is actually built up. Since companies have been building out infrastructures, they've been implementing applications, and through the IoT, they're building further and further out into the edges of their network with devices and sensors. These devices, sensors, as well as applications and infrastructure are all generated from different vendors. And therefore, a typical company may have 30, 40, even 50 or more different vendors all providing different components of the security landscape to their architecture. And therefore, companies must really take a multi-vendor approach to the security technology that's utilized. And so are they aware of the security issues, which was your question? Absolutely. However, the risks are evolving so quickly, and that the companies must keep pace with them, not just arming them with the technology, but also focus on the right talent and the right skills at the right time.
So talking about multi-vendors are actually, implementing worldwide solutions, and we have these threats coming around to us. The next question I have for you is, who is today's hacker? Is it still the teenager in the basement, the kind of things we see from Hollywood, for example, or is it more organized than that?
Hackers today take many different forms, both from an organized and unorganized standpoint. So you're right, teenagers, or in fact, even more than that, tech-savvy individuals who are out for, so to speak, a joyride, do create a lot of issues, and they are still a threat. However, hackers today do take many different forms. What we're finding today is they might be also not just the individuals, but they might be well-funded or even employed by organized crime or even government institutions. Organized crime, for example, can span multiple countries, and they're performing cyber crimes that are actually very difficult to detect and prosecute against. In terms of governments, today's cyber criminal syndicates may actually span multiple organizations that provide espionage to their country or their nations, right? So cyber espionage allows more information to be created and gathered at cheaper costs with greater deniability. And you're seeing this across the world today in terms of things that are happening in Asia and also in the Middle East.
We are up for our first polling question at this time.
And the question is, have you or your company ever experienced a cybersecurity breach?
Hearing or seeing the responses of the poll, and we actually have, yes, people have been hacked, or no, they haven't, or they just don't know, is what is at risk in the event of a cybersecurity attack? And if a company does get hacked, how much damage can actually be done?
The effects of cyber attacks or cybersecurity attacks aren't limited to the outages, but they can also result in loss of revenue, business opportunities, customers, and a significant amount of more impact. See, companies who believe they will dodge this bullet are ignoring the reality that the data is showing us. The question today isn't if an attack will happen or if you will get infiltrated. The question is actually when. So if you look at Gartner, Forrester, IDC, other pundits in the industry, what they're suggesting is many organizations don't even know if and when they've been infiltrated. And I think the poll sort of indicates that, right, where more people said that they don't know if they've been infiltrated than the people that know that they've been infiltrated, right? And today, even though they've been infiltrated, a typical infiltration or attack might require at least 4 to 6 months before the enterprise even knows that they've been infiltrated, which is pretty scary, right? Because for 4 to 6 months now, a foreign government or a cyber syndicate could actually be driving and stealing company data, personal data, customer data from that organization, and the organization doesn't even know about it. Most people think about outages, and yes, the network can come down. A typical outage could be anywhere from 1 to 8 hours, right? At least for 50% of the outages. And if you think about a manufacturing plant, that's 20% of the entire week's production capability that happens just because of that outage. Beyond outage, people forget of the other components. Revenue lost. 38% of those that have been infiltrated felt that they saw a substantial amount of revenue lost. In 2016, financial institutions paid on average $154 per lost or stolen record containing sensitive data. That sounds like, okay, it's only $154. When you think about, however, that in 2014, 1 billion of those records were lost or missing due to cybersecurity threats. You can quickly do the math. That's a $154 billion impact. A typical breach could actually be anywhere from 20 to 200,000 records at any given time. And that could be up to $30.1 or $30.8 million if you do the math. So again, that's a huge burden to bear, and that's just the cost of repaying the customers for that lost data. What about the actual implementation of security and the business opportunity loss? That's very critical as well. I mean, think about customer loss. How comfortable would you feel placing your money, your hard-earned money, in a bank that's just been infiltrated or publicly announced that they've been breached, right? So there's a lot of things above and beyond just the outages that can create damage for the enterprise.
That's great, Tejas. The other thing that I've noticed is a lot of companies that spend millions of dollars on their company branding. And the one thing is you know, I won't name some specific companies, but when they're hacked and exposed, that's another big thing. So bringing back the branding to that company is another hurdle they have to go through. The next question I have for you is, there's got to be a framework or some process or procedure that companies need to look at. So if they're attacked, how should a company react, and what should the company be doing before an attack?
Most companies start off with their mindset on after an attack, which is a very reactive situation to be in. But you know, after they've been attacked, a company obviously should do the following, right? They have to detail the scope of the breach, understand how much is being vulnerable. Obviously, they have to contain that breach, so no more data or no more vulnerabilities can spread. And then they have to quickly, or as quickly as possible, remediate the breach. So that's a very reactive stance. Companies that are successful in thwarting these and having a good defense really need to be planning before, during, and after. This is very critical to create an optimal scenario. So they need to have a holistic IT security incident response plan, which outlines exactly what they need to do before in terms of if we were to be attacked, what could be attacked or what could be vulnerable. They need to be focused on during and have a mitigation plan of how they can actually contain the breach and mitigate it very quickly without letting it spread across their network. And finally, after, they need to be able to scope and understand what has actually been impacted, close that off, and go quickly into a remediation process. You asked, Brad, if there were frameworks. There are several different frameworks across the industry. Cisco has one known as the Cisco Attack Continuum, and there is a link that we will provide to the listeners around this specific framework. Okay. The other thing we need to understand is a step-by-step process, and I think this slide actually outlines it at a very high level. See, companies should always have an existing IT security incident response plan. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different frameworks that are out there, but if you look at the continuum that I just mentioned from Cisco, it's focused on 4 critical steps. The first step is to understand the company as a target. You know, today, in today's world, mobile devices, data in the public cloud, or the cloud infrastructure itself, those are some of the most challenging areas to protect. It's important that a organization understands how these things could impact them, because some of them have greater attack surfaces, some of them do all of their sales through mobile devices, all of their customer transactions might be through applications. So this is how you have to understand what your company is vulnerable to. Second is you have to know outside and inside threats. So understand where these things are coming from. So if you're a company that is focused on applications and driving customer experience through mobile apps, for example, you have to keep in mind things like in 2014, there were 20,400 cloud applications. In 2016, in 2 short years, it was tenfold, over 222,000 cloud applications. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, or a few seconds ago, that is a major vulnerability, and it is one of the hardest to protect against. So if you're an organization in such a situation, you need to understand what these kind of threats are and what they could mean to your company, right? The step 3 is understanding your own company's capabilities. You know, in 2016, just a few months ago, only 56% of security alerts across the industry were ever investigated due to security constraints. So let me put that in a better context. That means almost 60% of all threats went uninvestigated. Even though the alarm showed up and said, hey, you might be vulnerable or you might be being infiltrated right now, the enterprise had no way to actually respond to that. Think about that. That's pretty scary. Step 4, create a plan of attack. If you are planning this appropriately, what happens if and during that attack, and then what happens afterwards? You know, most organizations today rely on third-party vendors. In fact, most enterprises today use third-party vendors for at least 20%, and today they're trying to increase that amount to get additional support. So it's very important to understand what would happen and have that plan in place so if and when it does happen, your organization, your enterprise is ready to respond. The threat landscape continues to evolve so quickly in today's world. So that's why the Cisco attack continuum is exactly that. So that's a great point, Brad. Thanks for bringing that up. It is an ongoing thing. It's not something that, like an insurance policy that you write once and you sort of tuck it in your bottom drawer and leave it there. It's something that continuously needs to be looked at.
So I think we're ready for our next poll.
The question is, does your company currently have an IT security incident response plan?
Yep, there we go. Okay, so Renee, what I'm seeing on the screen is there's a significant amount that says, yes, we have a plan, which is good. I'm happy to hear that. The next one is on the list as far as percentages is no, we don't have a plan. And then closely behind that is not yet, but will currently have a plan. And the last ones are not sure. So the good news with this is that the bulk of the respondents, they do have a plan, which was excellent. And just continuing on with our discussion today is Tejas had mentioned previously that we've got a combination of technology and talent. So you've got all the equipment and machinery, and then you have the talent that needs to drive and manage and maintain that equipment, whether it's firewalls, intrusion protection, that type of thing. And the concept here is your technology is only as powerful as the talent that's trained to use that. So my question to you, Tejas, is what are some of the challenges companies are facing today with their cybersecurity talent?
Yeah, that's, again, Brad, a great question. So I would actually bucketize the response in terms of cybersecurity talent in three areas. The first is the talent shortage. And you can see a whole bunch of different infographics. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of them, but 56% of IT decision makers today agree that they are challenged with a staff shortage, and that is a major challenge for them in terms of getting the security folks on board. The second statement that I would make, I just made a few minutes ago in terms of even if they understand that they need this talent, it's taking them upwards to 6 months to find a qualified candidate. So that's the talent shortage bucket. The second area would be around qualifications. And again, we covered this a few moments ago, and I think it's important enough to stress yet again. While a company may say that I need to hire people, they even get the budget to actually make that decision. And let's assume they even find a whole bunch of candidates that are willing to come on board. The problem is, how do you vet them out, and how do you compare one individual to the other, right? And that's a challenge that employers are having, because in these areas that are quickly evolving, such as security and cybersecurity, threats and the threat landscape continues to evolve on a daily, if not hourly basis, right? So how do you find somebody that is qualified to understand and put such an implementation or a security implementation plan together for your organization? So this is where training and certifications absolutely comes to bear. And the third bucket that I would say is, the first bucket was the talent shortage, the second is the qualifications. The third is very critical as well, and that is making sure that there's enough acknowledgement and a budget that's been set aside to actually bring the right folks on board, right? So 63% of technology decision makers do plan to increase training within their organization this year around security. And it's also important to note that 89% of companies believe that cybersecurity certified employees are the most critical to their business at this juncture. So there is an acknowledgement, but it's not at 100%, and that's very critical. And so a lot of the technologists or the IT staff is still struggling with getting acknowledgement from their executive leadership to build the budget and get moving very quickly on building out their talent capabilities around security. If not, remember, it could take up to 6 months even once you get the budget and the acknowledgement to move forward. So it's not something that you're going to be working on when you've already been infiltrated. This is something that goes back to preemptive and proactive planning.
So the next slide we have, the question that I have for you is, Cisco's done what I would call a great corporate initiative. They've got something called the Cybersecurity Scholarship, and I think it's about a year into the program, if not a little bit longer. So the question I have for you, Tejas, is what is the Cisco Global Cybersecurity Scholarship Program, and how will it benefit IT professionals and their businesses?
So far, we've talked about the volume and the sophistication of the cyber attacks and how that's rising across the industry. We talked about the significant shortage of skilled IT and security professionals that are required to protect the companies. So in response to this, our CEO, Chuck Robbins, back at the Economic World Forum in Davos back in January of 2016, made the announcement that Cisco will be investing $10 million in a 2-year global cybersecurity scholarship program to actually help the global enterprises or the global businesses across the world build out this cybersecurity talent. So what it is it's really a program that includes everything from the curriculum, the mentoring and the coaching, as well as the assessments required for individuals to go through the program, get skilled on a new and emerging job role known as the Cybersecurity Operations Specialist job role. And what it does is it prepares those individuals to be certified, so there is a qualification that employers can see and as they make their hiring decisions. So this program really leverages the newly released CCNA Cyber Ops offering that ties nicely to that job role. If you look on the screen here, this Global Cybersecurity Scholarship is a global program, and you can see the breakdown by region. So you can see this is a global issue, and the Cybersecurity Scholarship and the certification program that we have recently introduced does cover this on a global basis. So you can see that the scholarship itself is broken down by early in career, veterans that are returning from active duty within the various armed forces of their individual countries, as well as women in technology. Now, we'd like to see a little bit more in each of those areas as we continue forward with this scholarship program. In fact, recently, 77% of women polled and 67% of men polled said that no school teacher nor guidance counselor even mentioned cybersecurity as a career option to them as they were going through school. This is very critical because with a 2 million person skills gap in an industry that's growing 3 times or 3.5 times faster than any other job role in IT, it's very critical that people understand that the industry does need individuals, regardless of gender, regardless of background. Even if they're early in career, this would be a golden opportunity to get involved. And that's also another benefit of the Cybersecurity Scholarship Program itself. And while the program, as you mentioned, Brad, is about a year into it, there are some opportunities if individuals on the call here are interested in applying for. That could be a possibility, but I think it's more important to talk about the curriculum and the job role that it addresses.
Okay, that's excellent, Tejas. In fact, I do see some people that are in the chat area that are actually wondering about the prospects, and you mentioned it's huge out there. So definitely, if you're looking at a role or you know, a career in cybersecurity, as Tejas mentioned, it's quite active out there. What curriculum does the Cisco Cybersecurity Scholarship Program utilize, and is it generally available?
Yep, absolutely, Brad. It is generally available, and it is delivered through our both on an online version as well as through our authorized learning partners, of which Global Knowledge obviously is a critical partner in this. The curriculum, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is focused around the CCNA Cyber Ops, which is a Cisco Certified Network Associate program focused on the cyber operations job role. The job role or the curriculum itself really focuses on several critical areas. The preemptive monitoring, detection, and ability to flag suspicious activity. It's about actively, so this is during the attack, actively test security controls, proactively run investigations to make sure that it is actually a security breach versus just an abnormal behavior on the network. And then if it is deemed a threat, to be able to respond and implement the security measures that have been discussed previously within the organization. And then last but not least, proactively conduct a cleanup once that security incident has been mitigated and addressed. So once that breach has been addressed, we want to make sure that you do a proactive cleanup to make sure that there's no residue left behind. So that's what this program is actually about.
Great. Actually, it sounds really good. The next question I have is the comparison between this new cyber ops and the CCNA security. I actually have the CCNA security myself, and I find it's great for architecture design, but what is the difference between these two CCNA level cybersecurity courses?
Yeah, so Brad, CCNA security, and thanks for being one of our valued certified base members. We have over 3 million certified individuals around the globe today. And so CCNA, the Cisco Certified Network Associate on Security, is really focused on the network infrastructure itself, right? And so these are the folks that look at the network and, so to speak, build the castle walls, and protect the network or the enterprise from outside breaches. So these are folks that really understand the network and the network infrastructure, and then they understand how intrusion detection, firewalling, and other capabilities are utilized to actually build that wall around that castle. The castle obviously being, in this analogy, the enterprise, right? The CCNA cyber ops is around this new job role or evolving job role around cybersecurity, analytical threat detection and mitigation. So it's not about actually building the castle and building the walls so that folks can't come in terms of threats, but it's also about guarding the castle from the inside and proactively doing the monitoring. So if you think about it this way, and continuing with the analogy, if you have a network that needs to be protected, you need to build the walls so that the infrastructure keeps the bad guys out. But at the same time, if spies do make it inside the castle, right, they might have penetrated in through applications or cloud content or the infrastructure that is third party or end devices, right, in terms of data that's generated through this sensors or endpoints, then you need to make sure that you're proactively monitoring. So these are the sentries, the guards that are inside the castle to police and make sure that nothing's happening inside the castle if you have been breached or penetrated. And they do this in a proactive manner. So that's the two different job roles. The CCNA security, again, is focused on the network infrastructure and building the castle walls, while the CCNA cyber ops is based on the cybersecurity analyst job role, which is protecting and guarding inside the castle.
You have our next polling question. If you can kick it off for us, please.
Yes, and the question is, which Cisco security certification track would be of most value to build and enhance your IT career? These are the results, Brett.
Great. Thanks, Renee. So basically, a lot of people see value in both. So there's some that say CCNA security, there's cyber ops, and I'll tell you personally, I have my CCNA security, and I see great value in challenging myself on the cyber ops side of things. The value that I see with both is that it will give you a broader, wider understanding of being able to protect your data for your organization. What we want to do now is kind of focus down into the actual courses that are available, talk about ourselves as global knowledge, and get a little bit deeper dive into some of your next steps of what you can do to kind of gain more interest in your cybersecurity training and knowledge transfer. From Global Knowledge's perspective, this slide basically has an overview of our cybersecurity portfolio architecture. And we have over 100 security-related courses, and it's anything from the foundations and awareness at the bottom right up to penetration testing. And then all the way through that, we would have certification prep for the different areas of where you want to get specific testing on. Part of all of that cybersecurity training, we actually are a Cisco specialized learning partner. That gives us a bunch of privileges. And the one thing that we do at Global Knowledge, along with Cisco, is we're kind of a market leader in helping organizations address the challenges and opportunities of digital transformation. So you hear a lot about disruption, digital transformation. We help with that training, not only in your Cisco training, but we can kind of bring in other components in to help with that digital transformation. And also, Cisco has some great transformative business training classes also. The next bullet point there is we are a specialized learning partner, the highest level that you can get as a Cisco learning partner. And we also have another designation called Advanced Technology Learning Partner, what I believe there's 4 in the world. Now that gives us special privileges to be able to offer things that are unique or more specialized that we can offer through to you. And we do that specifically with, I'll call it specific customized, or we call it derivative works offerings. that would not be part of our common curricula. And we can get into things like, specifics for the ASA, that's Cisco's Adaptive Security Appliance. We can do boot camps in that, and we can do deeper dives into the SourceFire component. So that's another value add we have as a Cisco learning partner. And again, the last point there is our strength in partnership. Partnership is very key to us, and we work quite well together. And I believe, Tejas, it's over 20 years or coming up for that we actually work hand in glove with each other. We help advise on courses, and Tejas, your organization helps us get that ready for market and get the training ready to be able to present that. But the one thing with partners is that the thing that I'm realizing, we have something called an X on Y, and this is where we're recognizing, and Cisco also, is you might have a Cisco solution on a cloud structure, like a Cisco on Amazon Web Services or Cisco on Azure, that type of thing. So that's where our value of partnerships really starts to show some value. Now, specifically for our Cisco training that we have, we talked a lot about the cyber ops. Now, for us as a learning partner, it should be coming out shortly for us to offer as instructor-led training, but you did have a link in your chat area that actually can push you towards Cisco's security offerings. So do have a look at that. The next part is from all of our Cisco offerings and also our unique offerings that we offer. We boil it down to 3 specific areas. So we do have product training. So this is a skills building. And again, I talked about the Adaptive Security Appliance. That's Cisco's firewalling. They have the ICE product. So you can actually get more into the SourceFire training, which is basically a great product if you're not familiar with it. This is an area we can actually get in and do a little bit deeper dive or specialization on the SourceFire. And we have products training on the firepower, intrusion prevention, advanced malware, and the SNORT, which is the open source intrusion prevention hooks, say it, for intrusion prevention side of things. And then the last thing is we also work with our partnership with Cisco, and we offer the security certifications, and we go through the CCNA associate level and the professional level. We have all the required training that you can take for that, and our training includes both the courseware and the hands-on labs that go along with that. Okay, so I guess just summing off is that we talked about how we have technology and talent and defending your data, and at this time we're going to open it up to a couple of questions that we have.
Hey, Brad, before we do that, just a couple quick statements to add to what you just closed with. As a leading learning partner of Cisco's, Global Knowledge also has the ability to do what we call derived work. So they can take the curriculum on the topics that Brad just went through in terms of whether it's firewall or ICE, which is the Identity Services Engine, or the IDS, right, Intrusion Detection System Services and such. They can take all of this content and customize our content to meet your specific requirements or that of your enterprises, so that they can provide not just the standard off-the-shelf type training, but they can also customize this training curriculum to meet your specific requirements. And that is a value add that Global Knowledge, as a authorized learning partner, has the ability to deliver.
Okay, and I'll keep aware of the time that we have left. But the first one is quite detailed. I'll just read it off as they presented it to us, and it is, what is the global tactic to curb cybersecurity threats as threats are becoming more complex and diverse by the day? It's a good question, and my quick answer is that, yeah, cybersecurity attacks, they are becoming more complex day by day, and it's almost like we're having to shift and adapt ourselves to these new forms of attack that are coming out. So the one thing that Tejas mentioned is you got to establish a framework, and the framework like the Cisco Attack Continuum is a great place to start, and you have to have your before, during, and after mindset. And that's the best way to handle these threats and keep ahead of these threats as they're changing. And the other key thing is individuals at all job levels need to take a responsibility for cybersecurity. So if you're an employee and you see a USB stick out in the parking lot, don't pick it up and plug it into your laptop, because that's probably a bad thing to do. So that's all part of your overall training that you should get in awareness as far as your personal responsibility for cybersecurity. Okay? I've got another one that I can look at very quickly here, and the question is, how do I improve my knowledge of cybersecurity and networking? Okay, good question, and what I would do is kind of base it on the slide that I had that had all the boxes on it. Now I would suggest if you're new to cybersecurity, let's start at the foundations and awareness. So kind of get a introduction to cybersecurity, and then just kind of go up the ladder for those type of things. Okay. Tejas also mentioned about the guard the castle or design the castle, and my recommendation is get your fundamentals, find out what is of interest to you or what is of value within your job role, and if you're a person that's going to guard the castle, then take the courses associated with that. If you're into design the castle, then go ahead and do that. Now the good thing is that we are an authorized learning provider at Global Knowledge, and we can kind of help you as far as what you want to do is giving you guidance and that type of thing. Okay?
Yep. All right. Hey, Brad, let me chime in there with just a couple other things. What you see on the screen here is a slide that you presented just a few moments ago, right? And I think it's important that I think the certifications are very valuable if you're looking to grow in your career and such. But the full spectrum of training needs to be considered as well, right? So the thing is, if you're in a job in your company or within your organization and you're focused on development or engineering, or you're actually designing or you're implementing the network, or you're actually troubleshooting the network, right? You're a technical assistance individual. All of those calls for a different focus around training and education. And so it's important to understand that there is product training that covers each of the individual products, whether it's the Cisco ICE or the ASA, which is the firewall component, or even SourceFire, which is a soft-based implementation across the entire network infrastructure, right? A software-based focus. Whatever it is, there's the product component, there's the solutions-based component that looks at the network overall from end to end, and then there's the certification, which is a career qualification type and aligned to an actual job role type training that leads to that certification. So I don't want to discount any of those. You have to pick and choose what is the most appropriate for you at your specific juncture in what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, that's great. And Tejas, actually, the next question I am looking at here, and I'll just read it off, is very apropos to this, is what certifications are most essential to have in the cybersecurity field? And my quick answer for that is I want to reference back to surveys that we run globally at Global Knowledge every year. We call it the IT Skills and Salary Report. And within that report, we prompt 14,000 IT professionals, and that's worldwide, on specific questions for what we are looking for to kind of determine the IT certification and value in job roles that are out there. Specifically for cybersecurity, remember this report talks about all IT areas, but for pertinent to the cybersecurity things is what we found is there's certifications that give you broad and wide background in knowledge transfer, like the CISSP, and then there's ones that go specifically into certified ethical hacker, and again, that's great if that's what you're looking for as far as your knowledge transfer, your job role, that type of thing. Now, the one thing I do like is in our salary report, we also found that a lot of people had the CCNA security and it was in high demand and highly valued. So that's a great thing that we had from the results of our salary survey. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question for whoever prompted it on us. I've got another question, if I could. Again, I'm watching our time. I think if it's okay, I might be able to get 2 more questions in here. And Tejas, if you need to just kind of interrupt me and add some value into this, please do.
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. Before you jump right into that next question, there's a couple ones that just came in on the chat windows, and I wanted to cover them off really quick because I think we can make this super fast. There's an individual that wants to figure out where they can apply for the cybersecurity scholarship, and another question around where they can get some more information on the certification. Both of those links have been provided within the chat window. So hopefully I've just knocked out 2 more of the live questions that are coming in. Brad, sorry, go ahead with your with the other queued up question that you had.
Yeah, and Tejas, I've got time for one more question, and I'll ask and I'll give my input to it, and I'll just ask if you can kind of follow up when I finish here, and then Renee will close off our presentation. So here's the question. How do you get buy-in from leadership that their company should prepare for cybersecurity attacks? Excellent question, because you may be working in an IT role and you're seeing that this is extremely important, but it's just not getting the understanding at the C-level within the organization. So it is difficult. So what we're finding is it falls into a couple major buckets of why this is not getting buy-in. It's either lack of time, there's no understanding of the impact of it, like Tejas mentioned earlier, of the monetary impact. I talked about the branding impact if they get hacked. And there could be challenges with budget or change management. So if you've got some other value to add in there, Tejas, please do. But it's a matter of getting a great understanding corporate-wide. So everybody has to take responsibility for this.
Absolutely. I think from the top down to the bottom, and the bottom being those that are actually closest to the network and the infrastructure, really all areas need to be working in harmony in terms of having a very solid threat response in place, both before, during, and even after threats, because as I mentioned earlier, it's not about when you're going to be attacked, it's or if you're going to be attacked, it's about when you're going to be attacked, right? The other thing to think about is outsourcing, right? If you're really struggling with getting the skills built, obviously you have to go through the training and get that taken care of. You need to hire, so you have to reskill your existing talent. You need to bring talent into the mix. And then the third option is also to outsource. And the top 3 outsourced services today are advice and consulting type services as you build your mitigation plan, auditing to make sure that your plan is secure and your staff has not overlooked anything, and also incident response is a third area where your team may have been great at mitigating a threat and addressing it, but now you bring in a third party to just validate that nothing has been overlooked in terms of that response. So 3 different things to think about in terms of building out your staff. Reskilling your current staff or upskilling your current staff. The second area being making sure that you have an active budget to hire and bring in individuals. And then the third is you can always supplement this in your capabilities with outsourced services.